Water. Okay. Welcome to the House Ag and Natural Resource Budget Committee. You want to hear from David? Representative, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, yesterday, or I don't know if it was yesterday, time flies when you're having fun, but there was some consideration about, confusion maybe about the pay-go rule. And I have asked Amy Deckard to have David come and speak to us and talk through the pay-go rule, how it affects us in committees. So, David, would you be able to do that now, please? And can you stand up because I can't see you there? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Good afternoon. On the pay-go rule, that is House Rule 2110 of the House Rules, and it just says it's titled Floor Amendments to Bills Making Appropriations, and it just says that no floor amendment to increase the amount of expenditures would be authorized in provision of appropriations bill shall be in order unless that the amendment contains a provision reducing by a like or greater amount of expenditures that be authorized another provision of such appropriations bill. Since this speaks to floor amendments, this would be in the committee of the whole, in the House. This would not necessarily impact these budget committees or the full appropriations committee. This is when you're in the full committee of the whole of the House. So that's where the rule applies.
Yes, thank you very much. I do see a question though.
Oh, sorry, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure I understand. So any changes that we make to the budget here in the committee that then advances to appropriations, those do not have to adhere to pay-go. Like we can make adjustments in the budget and we don't have to consider pay-go.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the way the rule is, it's just on the floor amendments on the committee of the whole. It's really up to the committee then if they want to have any other restrictions on that. But as of right now, the rule does not apply to budget committees. We're recommending budgets to appropriations or when appropriations takes those and works on those before they kick the bill out of committee.
Mr. Chairman, that's not a rule for our committee either, right? So pay-go just applies when we get to the House floor. Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the point was over the years earlier, before we ever used pay-go, a lot of people brought their needs to the floor and we supported them, and then the budget would grow and grow and grow. And when we had some tight financial times, that couldn't happen. So we put pay-go into place, and there was a reason for it. Right now, I think we could do it, but we decided not to the other day. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
David, thanks.
Thank you, David.
So moving on, Luke, you're next in the hot seat.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Here we go. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, good afternoon. My name is Luke Drury, and I am a fiscal analyst with Legislative Research. And today I will be going over the Kansas Water Office's budget. Behind me in the gallery is Connie Owen, Director for the Water Office, and she will plan to give testimony and answer questions as well after the budget presentation. Again, by now, these budget analysis all kind of look the same. So page number 1 is an overview for you. It does include a blurb in there and what the agency does, operations, and then also an executive summary. But I'd like to begin my presentation on page number 3, please. At the bottom of page 3 is a look at state general fund expenditures by the agency over time. As you can see from FY 2015 to FY 2021, there were no SGF expenditures. However, in 2022, there were $80 million of expenditures to pay off water supply storage debt. This was related to Big Hill, Clinton, and Hillsdale reservoirs. And then as you can see as well, the yellow line is the governor's recommendation. There is additional SGF being recommended by the governor, and we will talk about that a little bit later on in the presentation. If we move on then onto page number 4. We have a look at the Water Marketing Fund. We have a look at expenditures over time, and then in addition to that, revenues and expenditures along with any balances below. Under the Federal Water Supply Act of 1958, federal reservoirs constructed in Kansas for the purpose of flood control were authorized to include storage space for municipal and industrial water supplies. In 1961, the legislature approved financial assistance for inclusion of water storage in the federal reservoirs constructed in the state. And in 1974, the legislature passed the State Water Plan Storage Act, which authorizes the agency to contract with water purchasers for the sale of water from any reservoir included in the Kansas Water Marketing Program. Water Marketing Fund was created in 91. Revenue from the Water Marketing Fund is generated by the sale of water supplied under contracts with public water suppliers and industries from state-owned storage in federal lakes purchased from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The price of water is set annually according to an established formula and is not negotiable. The fund is then used to meet the state's contractual water storage obligations to the federal government through transfers to the State Conservation Storage Water Supply Fund. The Water Marketing Fund expenditures are estimated to decrease in 2023, and this is because the agency anticipates decreased expenditures from the fund for debt service interest and principal payments when compared to 2022 actuals. Then if we move on onto page 5, we'll get into some of the meat and potatoes in regard to what the budget's looking like. Again, the top of the page here is a table, and we will start from the legislatively approved amount in 2022. From there, we identify changes, either legislatively, agency, or governor, and then those numbers on the left-hand side of the table do correspond with the blurbs below and throughout the section. Subsequent to the 2022 session, there were 2 adjustments that were made to the $13.9 million, including $1.1 million SGF appropriated to the Water Office. The adjustments change the current year approved without any additional work done by the legislature. This includes a reappropriation from the general fund of $3 million. And this also includes State Water Plan Fund reappropriations of $2.7 million. Again, these are reappropriations from General Fund, Water Plan Fund, which were unspent in 2022 and rolled forward into 2023. The agency submits a revised estimate of $19.6 million. This includes $4.1 million SGF in 2023. This is the amount. The amount requested is equal to the agency's approved budget for 2023. There was just one adjustment, and that was an FTE adjustment. Excuse me. Item number 3 is the agency's revised estimate includes the addition of 1 FTE position above the agency's approved number. This additional position is related to the agency filling a previously vacant water resource planner position. The governor for FY 2023 is recommending expenditures totaling $72.6 million, including $57.1 million general fund. And this is related to item number 4. The governor is recommending adding $53 million from the general fund to pay off remaining future use storage debt that is associated with Milford and Perry Lake reservoirs. Mr. Chairman, I can continue on, or I can stand for questions.
Committee, do we have any questions? I just continue on, Luke.
Certainly. On page number 6, there is a look at change from actual expenditures to agency approved. You'll notice on the left-hand side, the SGF is $78 million from actuals as opposed to 4.1 in the current year. That is related to a lot of these changes are related to the debt soar-off that was approved by the legislature last year. So that's why 22 looks higher than 2023. If we move on then onto page number 7, we'll get into the budget year FY 2024. Again,
I guess. Question, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would you please go back on page 6? I don't know. I thought you just said something. I thought you said that the 2022 looked higher than 2023.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, yes, on the, if you notice the blue color for SGF, that's 2022 actuals
Okay,
is 78 million, and that was for 2022 related to the debt service payoff that was recommended last year. And this is looking at agency requests then. So the agency did not include the future debt store off in their request. That was a governor's recommendation. So that doesn't get picked up here. So that's why it looks 22 is higher.
dollar figures when you say that, please. The $563,000 is less than the 8.1 million. That's what you're saying?
Mr. Chair and Representative, I was for the SGF figure. There were some other changes, and I will note that the all funds and federal funds did get transposed here.
Okay.
So there is an issue with that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And you, Luke.
On to page number 7, which is the FY 2024 analysis. Again, we take the same general approach, and that is to say that we take the agency's revised estimate in 2023. We take a look at any enhancement requests that they have, any changes done by the agency. We identify those. Again, the numbers on the table will correspond with numbers below throughout. The agency requests FY 2024 expenditures of $15.8 million, and this includes $1.1 million general fund. This is an all funds decrease of $3.8 million, or 19.5%, including an SGF increase of $7,157, or less than 0.1% from the 2023 revised estimate. These are related to item number 1. There is an enhancement for water quality partnerships. The agency requests $450,000, all from the State Water Plan Fund, to expand water quality partnerships in the fiscal year 2024. Item number 2, enhancement for the High Plains Aquifer partnerships. The agency requests $450,000, again, all from the State Water Plan Fund, to expand High Plains Aquifer partnerships in 2024. Item number 3, the agency's SGF reappropriations. The agency's FY 2023 revised estimate included reappropriations of $3 million from the general fund. The agency estimates to get those dollars out the door in the current year, and so therefore that's been adjusted out. Item number 4, State Water Fund reappropriations. Same deal with the SGF reappropriations. That is to say that money from 22 rolled into 23. The agency is estimating expending those dollars in 2023, and they will not carry forward into 2024. So then that gets pulled out. Item number 5, other assistance. The agency's request for FY 2024 includes additional expenditures for other assistance when compared to the agency's revised 2023 estimate. Expenditures for other assistance include state aid payments that are related to the Kansas Reservoir Protection Initiative, I'm not sure I can say this word, but I'm going to try, the Equus Beds Chlorine Plume Remediation Project, and the High Plains Aquifer Partnerships. Moving on then onto page number 8. Item number 6, debt service interest. The agency's 24 request includes increased expenditures of $116,103 from debt service interest payments when compared to 2024. And then all other adjustments made by the agency total $635,897, including $7,157 from the general fund for 24. The adjustments are primarily attributable to contractual service expenditures. Most contractual services expended by the agency are related to projects aimed at supporting public water supply programs and managing existing water resources. The majority of the increase is in memorandums of understanding, MOUs, with Storage in Council Grove and Elk City, and technical assistance to water users. For 2024, the governor concurs with the agency's she concurs with the agency's request for 2024. Then, Mr. Chair, if we continue on to page number 9, there's some more information here specifically on the agency enhancement request. As you'll know, the agency included these enhancement requests. The governor concurs with the agency's recommendation, so these are in the governor's recommendation. For water quality partnerships, the agency indicates it has been working since January 18 to coordinate project activities in association with the Milford Lake Watershed Regional Conservation Partnership Project. In 2024, the agency has requested enhanced funding of $450,000 to support the establishment of new water quality partnerships in southwest Kansas along the Arkansas River and increased support for nutrient reduction efforts within the Milford Lake watershed. Additionally, the High Plains Aquifer Partnerships. The agency indicates High Plains Aquifer Partnerships include showcasing conservation efforts that benefit the overall viability of the High Plains Aquifer for multiple water use groups. Funding for the project is used to develop new partnerships to demonstrate emerging tools and technologies that promote water user reduction in the High Plains Aquifer region for Kansas. For 2024, the agency has requested $450,000 from the Water Plan Fund to further efforts to conserve and extend the High Plains Aquifer. And then, Mr. Chair, the rest of the presentation or the handout here will give you information regarding programs within the agency. This includes performance measures as well as reported to us, KLRD. I would note too that these are also available online. And then these performance measures are shown in our budget analysis as they are reported to the department. And with that, Mr. Chair, I can stand for questions if there are any.
Thank you. Thank you. I just have one question. The FTE that's being added, is that a classified or non-classified position?
Mr. Chairman, in order to answer the representative's question, I believe that to be unclassified. Most new positions in the agency, or excuse me, most new positions in state government are unclassified, but that is something that I would need to follow up and to ensure, but I'm fairly certain of that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Luke, how much is in the state water fund and where do I find that information?
Mr. Chair, off the top of my head, I do not know that, but I am the water plan fund coordinator. I have the information back in my office. I'll go pull that. I'll get that for you, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have, Mr. Chair, I do have some right here, and I can go back downstairs and print some more.
No other questions for Luke. We're gonna go ahead.
Luke, you can stay right there for a moment, please. Is this the answer to my question on how much money there is, or is that expenditures?
Mr. Chair and Representative, I've seen that before. That is produced by, I believe that's from the Water Office themselves. So that's not a KLRD publication, but I do believe that that looks very similar to what the KLRD publication does look like.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Luke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Where is that on this page that you said you found?
Mr. Chair, sorry. The very bottom here.
So, Connie, I see. It's Connie. Welcome to a committee.
Members of the committee, thank you very much. I'm Connie Owen, the director of the Kansas Water Office, and you will be seeing me very briefly this afternoon. I'm just going to introduce a few things that you've heard about a number of times, including just now, and then I'll be introducing Victoria Potts to actually walk you through our budget. So the three enhancement items that Luke was mentioning to you just now, and you've also heard me mention them before, would be in the State Water Plan Fund, the Water Quality Partnerships for $450,000 enhancement, and the High Plains Aquifer Partnerships for $450,000 enhancement. And what's similar about these two line items is the ability to leverage partnership opportunities to advance these respective areas of need, both water quality and with High Plains aquifer depletion. The Water Quality Partnership funding will help with watershed conservation practice implementation within areas experiencing surface and or groundwater quality issues. Previous funding targeted cost share for the Milford Lake Regional Conservation Partnership Program that improved water quality conditions in the watershed. The FY 2024 funding could continue that collaborative effort, as well as engage other partnership opportunities, such as addressing Upper Arkansas or Arkansas River mineralization studies. The High Plains Aquifer Partnership, we have existing water technology efforts. You've heard of water tech farms and so on. They have grown into a comprehensive water innovation systems and education initiative, or WISE. The requested funding would enhance leveraging of public-private partnership programs to foster the implementation of field practices and technologies, water reuse and reclamation efforts, and management strategies. The goals of these activities would include measurable groundwater conservation, improved water quality, and overall soil health. Transition to the partnership's funding line will provide additional state resources to extending the life of the Ogallala High Plains Aquifer. So both of these, a key component of those is the idea of leveraging non-state dollars and making our state dollars go farther. The other item that I'll mention briefly, as you've heard, is our public water supply storage debt. The governor's recommendations include an expenditure of $53 million from the state general fund to pay off water supply storage debt in Milford Lake and Perry Lake. As you may recall, and thank you very much again, last year approximately $80 million was spent to pay down reservoir debt ahead of time on our three other reservoirs. These two are the last two remaining. Under this recommendation, payoff of this debt would result in over $29 million in interest savings. In addition to interest savings, early payoff would fulfill the statutory obligation of the state to control all waters affecting the people of the state. There's actually a statute in place that makes it the responsibility of the state to control the waters within the state. It would also allow for the state to have authority over decisions regarding the use of the storage. And I have mentioned to you before, and I'll mention again, that paying off this debt, probably the largest benefit in my mind, even more so than the interest savings, is that we would have, in effect, on-demand control of the water in that storage component. So until it's paid for, we don't have that kind of on-demand control. And that means that the state would be making decisions on how that water is used within our storage capacity instead of the federal government. And this would make additional marketing funds available for vital reservoir sustainability projects. So this would then help help free up some funds that we desperately need to help preserve these reservoirs and invest in them so that they remain usable and serviceable over the long term. So having highlighted those three items at this point, Mr. Chair, with your permission, I'd like to hand this over to Victoria Potts, who is our Policy and Governmental Affairs Lead, and she will walk you through our budget overview. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Victoria Potts, and I will be presenting from this document in front of you that says Budget Overview for the Kansas Water Office. And turning to page 1 of that document, as Luke noted, we do have 19 funded FTE positions, but I do want to provide a little bit more clarity on the FTE change between 22 and 23. In fiscal year 2022, all state agencies were asked to cut state general fund expenditures by 10%. To meet that request, the Kansas Water Office held open a water resources planner position and did not budget for that position in 22. So that's why in 22 there are 18 positions. In 2023 and 2024, we are budgeting for that position. So the increase, we aren't increasing our authorized positions. We are just funding a position that was not funded in 2022. And I hope that helps clear up that FTE change between fiscal year 2022 and fiscal year 2023. So again, 19 FTE positions. At the bottom of page 1, you'll see our full budget for both of our programs. Fiscal year 2022 actuals, $90 million. That does include $80 million appropriated by the legislature to pay off water supply storage debt in Big Hill, Clinton, and Hillsdale Lakes. And thank you to the legislature for appropriating that for fiscal year 2022. Fiscal year 2023 does reflect the governor's recommendations. So it does include that $53 million to pay off water supply storage debt in Milford and Perry Lakes that Connie just mentioned. And fiscal year 2024, just under $16 million represents a more normal level of operating expenditures without that water supply storage debt payoff. And I'll turn the page to page 2. Page 2 just starts a description of our first program, water planning and implementation. And you've already heard about our program, so I won't describe them to you too much. But at the bottom of page 2, you'll see the program expenditures for water planning and implementation. That water supply storage debt is budgeted in our water planning and implementation program. So when you're looking at the bottom of page 2 under expenditures, fiscal year 22 does include that $80 million I just mentioned. Fiscal year 23 does include the $53 million we talked about, and then fiscal year 2024. At the top of page 3, you'll see a little bit more detail about that future use storage that is being discussed as paid off for the $53 million, Milford and Perry Lake. You'll see the contract end date as well as the interest rate for each of those contracts. And again, the governor's recommendation does include $53 million from the state general fund to pay off those contracts. I'll turn a couple of pages now to page 6. Page 6 does discuss the State Water Plan Fund. I know you've already had the hearing on Department of Agriculture's budget, but in case you aren't familiar with the State Water Plan Fund, it's a fund that receives fees that I'll discuss, as well as a couple of transfers, creating a single fund that is shared between multiple agencies. So for instance, for fiscal year 2024, the Water Office, Department of Agriculture, KDHE Division of Environment, Wildlife and Parks, and Kansas Geological Survey all receive funds from the State Water Plan Fund. And to illustrate that a little bit more, because that can be difficult to picture, you've all noticed the extra handout that we have that breaks out what each agency gets by program, as well as on the back, there is revenue. So to answer any questions about ending balance, does have the ending balance for fiscal year 2024 on that extra handout. So I hope that helps illustrate the State Water Plan Fund for you. Back in that main book, but still on page 6, the fees for the State Water Plan Fund are laid out in that blue box in the middle, their name and current rate. And those fees usually generate about $12 million a year. On page 7 discusses the 2 transfers that go into the State Water Plan Fund. So it should be $6 million from the State General Fund and $2 million from the Economic Development Initiatives Fund per year. Thank you to the legislature for fully funding those transfers in fiscal year 2023. The governor did recommend those full transfers for fiscal year 2024 as well. For those of you that aren't as familiar with the State Water Plan Fund, since 2008, those two transfers for $6 million and $2 million have not been made from 2008 to 2022. So we're glad that those are recommended and appropriated for fiscal year 2023 and 2024. I'll turn the page again to page 8. Page 8 describes the State Water Plan Fund line items specific to the Kansas Water Office. So as I mentioned, the State Water Plan Fund is shared between multiple agencies. Page 8 describes the ones that are specific to the Kansas Water Office. There are 13 of them. As Connie mentioned, about halfway down page 8, we did request 2 enhancements related to State Water Plan Fund line items for water quality partnerships and for High Plains Aquifer partnerships, both $450,000, and those were recommended by the governor for fiscal year 2024. And pages 9 through 25 of this document then describe each of the 13 line items in detail. So if you see a line item on page 8 they're interested in having more information on, you can find that in the later pages of this document. But for now, I'll skip all the way to page 30. Give everyone a second. Great. On page 30 is the description of our second program, the Public Water Supply Program. The Public Water Supply Program operates the water marketing, water assurance, and access district programs to efficiently operate state-owned storage in federal reservoirs. You can see the program expenditures in the middle of page 30 for fiscal year 22, the governor's recommendations for 23 and for 24. So there's a little bit of background. The typical expenditures for the Public Water Supply Program are listed on page 31, the second half of page 31, I should say. So principal and interest to the Army Corps of Engineers, which is that debt service that we've been talking a lot about, the $53 million, the $80 million to pay off principal and interest. Other expenditures, operation and maintenance of our portions of those reservoirs, as well as administration and enforcement. So the cost that it actually takes for the water office to run this program, salaries, etc. And Mr. Chairman, that is the end of my presentation, and I will stand for any questions that you may have.
Representative Akala.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's not off the subject, but I know we got a lot of new people here, maybe for some of the old people. Can you define the classification of reservoirs when you talk about storage reservoirs or conservation reservoirs or flood control? I mean, so everybody understands, because I think when they talk about paying off the debt, I may be wrong, but there might be some people sitting around here that are new that wonder, what is that?
Sure, yeah. I will explain what the debt is going to pay off, and then I may phone a friend for the rest of it. So the debt that's being paid off is called future use storage debt, and there is a description on page 3 of the booklet in case you're curious. But future use storage debt is storage that is currently not in service. So it's not being utilized to fulfill a water marketing contract or a water assurance contract or an access district. So it's not being used, meaning there's no customers bringing in revenue to pay off that debt for us, which is why in the past 2 years, the legislature has considered and has appropriated money to pay off the debt, because there are no customers to pay off this. We call it future use storage debt. And for the rest of it, I may phone a friend to describe it. Does that cover it?
I think that's good. Yeah, I was
Great.
doing it mainly for my colleagues and
Sure,
myself. Yeah. I mean, so everybody understands, because I remember it was a little while before I understood what that was.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And this may be for Connie, but you may know as well, Victoria, but I'm not sure where the High Plains Aquifer is. More familiar with Ogallala. We've talked about it so much, but and what it, what's affected by it.
Yeah, good afternoon. This is Matt Unruh, Kansas Water Office, and I'll just touch on your question real briefly. In the context of the High Plain Aquifer in Kansas, really that covers the extent of all 5 of the GMD areas within the state of Kansas. So including the Equus Beds region, sort of south central Kansas, Great Bend Prairie Aquifer region there, and kind of the central part of the state, and then the Ogallala portion, which covers really the western third of the state. So when we talk about the context of the overall High Plains Aquifer, it would be each of those parts of the larger High Plains Aquifer system in the state.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Matt.
Representative Curtis.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I just have a quick question here. On page 14, there's a little map, and it talks about reservoir and water quality. I think it's research, but I noticed that there's a couple of folks there or counties there in the red that haven't seen any activity or any survey for 19 to 22 years. So I guess my question is, I'm just kind of looking back over here, that we're making some enhancements to make sure that our quality, does this in any way, is this just research or does this impact at all? How does that relate to making sure that we are having good water quality in those areas that haven't seen a survey in 19 to 22 years?
I can start, and then if Matt or Connie want to add, I will say, so for this specific line item that starts on page 13 and carries over to 14, it is specifically for quality and research. We have other line items, and there are other line items in the State Water Plan Fund that I would characterize as water quality implementation, so that actually implement programs to address water quality. But this one specifically is just research.
You need to be commended in your team for a good looking budget. And I would ask Luke to show these to those people who can't seem to do a budget. Anyway, but I have a question. I was looking here on page 3 maybe. And where it says water supply remaining, and then you have like future use and per acre feet. It looks like both those reservoirs, Milford's about 200,000 acre feet. Can you kind of give me a reference for what an acre, what that means? An acre, what is that? A foot of water over an acre? Connie?
Yeah, exactly. So it's the amount of water that it takes to cover an acre in 1 foot of water.
Committee, any questions? Representative Jacobs?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With these 2 enhancement of water quality partnership and High Plains Aquifer partnerships, did I hear that there's possible grant money that can coincide with this also from the federal government?
Sure. Again, I'll take a stab at it if Matt wants to add. Yes, the point of expanding both of what covers each of the line items is the hope that that entities would be able to use it to leverage not just federal government, but either other public or private partnerships in order to get the maximum amount of funding for their project. So yes, that's the hope, that it would leverage not just federal government, but other funds as well.
Mr. Chair, do you have a guesstimate of any estimates that might bring in? Has there already been fishing program going on?
Matt Unruh again, Kansas Water Office, and I just might touch on one estimate in relation to the water quality partnerships funding line. If you look at some of the funding resources that would be available for that, that funding line is a transition of our previous Milford Lake Watershed RCPP funding line to a broader water quality partnerships funding line. Through the existing Milford Lake Watershed RCPP project, we are eligible for another 5-year renewal for that particular project, which in the case of the renewal, it would allow us to utilize state and other partner resources to leverage $2.88 million in federal funding to advance water quality efforts to benefit the Milford Lake watershed nutrient reduction efforts in the Milford Lake watershed. So that would be one example of the type of leveraging opportunities that we would look to be able to do with some of these partnership lines, whether it's a water quality partnerships line, in the case of surface or groundwater quality partnerships, and in the place of the High Plains Aquifer partnerships line, it could be some of those competitive type funding opportunities where we would have those state resources available to leverage with federal or other partner resources to advance conservation efforts on both fronts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure. So I can tell you there are 22, someone not 22 contracts, 22 contracts that through the water marketing program. And it is cities primarily, but also industrial users. So think like power plants, things like that. So we have 22 contracts with different entities that utilize the water marketing program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to put Victoria on the spot real quick, throughout the years when she was working in legislative research, she was my go-to person, and that's why she has so much patience.
Very, very well put. Committee? Thank you very much, Connie and Victoria, all of you. If there are no more questions, thank you. So adjourned. You say adjourned?
Approved.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was trying to get out of here. No. Okay, let's do that. Those who approve the budget, yay. Opposed? Budget is approved. So, Representative? Representative? Both years? 23 and 28. Okay, that is 23 and 24. Thank you. Right. Yep. Oh, tomorrow will be wildlife and parks. Yeah, and anyway, thanks everybody. Adjourned yet? Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just would ask the body, the committee, if I could be allowed to change my vote on the soil conservation amendment yesterday. I voted no. I was confused about what it was. And I had agreed earlier that it was a good thing, and I would like to be a yes on that. And that's all I need. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Without any objections? Representative?
I don't have any objections, and I'd love for my colleague to be able to change their vote, but I think the rules read that it can only be done the day of, prior to adjournment. So is there somebody that can verify that? Okay.
A slight timeout.
I just don't want to make a motion and then it's not, then we come back later on, somebody says.
So committee, the motion's on the floor
Okay.
to allow, make your motion so they know what it is.
I'd like to change my vote from no to yes on the soil conservation amendment yesterday, Mr. Chair. I move my motion.
Those in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Opposed? So changed.